Are you afraid of putting a resin top coat on your painting?
Well, if you are, this episode is for you. I'm going to show you exactly how to apply a resin top coat easily, and I'll even show you how to fix a resin top coat if something goes wrong. So stick around to the very end of the video and we'll show you the 3 finished pieces of the resined art you'll see us create today.
Yes.
I'm Lee Massey.
I'm Jeremy Massey.
And this is
Masse Art Studios.
Let's get to the table.
Let's do it.
All right, out there in YouTube land, ladles and jelly spoons, thank you for joining me. Okay, we're going to get right into this. We already have a video up on how to resin coat, flood coat an acrylic painting that you've already painted, but it was time for an update. And as you may have already seen, we're doing a giveaway because we just hit 40,000 subscribers, and I'm going to resin that piece right here just for you so that you can see how I resin my pieces. And I'm hoping that this episode will delay or get rid of any fears that you might have with resin. I'm hoping that this video will show you that if you do have a mistake, or if there is something in a finished piece, that you can fix it, because I'm going to show you how to fix a piece. But I'm also going to show you just how easy this process is. I think there's a lot of fears around resin because it's a chemical, because it's sticky, because people feel like they might wreck a piece. Well, hopefully this will show you that you don't need to worry about any of those things. So on the table in front of me, I've got some bits and pieces that I need in order to resin coat, flood coat, top coat my painting. Let's first off start talking about the resin. There are many, many different types of resin, many different manufacturers out there also. The different types of resin that you've got are UV resin, you've got fast setting resin, and then you've got kind of your traditional then other resins. We tend to use 2 in particular, but today I'm going to show you one of our favorites, which is actually Mixed Media Girls resin. So that's what we'll be using. On the table, I've also got something to mix the resin in. I've got a very important tool, a level, to make sure that everything is level. I've got some spatulas, and I like to use a plastic spatula when I use my resin work rather than the wooden popsicle sticks. I've got some alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. I've got my rubber gloves and paper towels. I've got some sandpaper, which I'll be using a little later on to show you how to fix a piece that might either have bubbles in it or maybe a bit of schmutz in it that you want to try and get out. And then clearly I've got my my painting that will be resining. So these are some of the equipment I'll be using. If I've missed some off, I'll kind of tell you what they are as we get to it. So let's then get to resining this piece. I love this piece that Jeremy painted. It is so pretty, and it's going to look so great with a top coat of resin on it. Okay, so let's use one of our first implements that you just saw on the table, and it is this. It is a level. It's going to be really hard for you to see the bubbles here. I'm sure it's not even focusing, but if you know how to use a level, then this is fairly straightforward. The idea is that the bubble in the level is going to be between the 2 black lines on your level, and that means that it's straight if it's perfectly in the middle. Why do we have to do this when we're resining? Well, it's super important that the actual canvas is straight, otherwise what will happen is all the resin will spill off the edges. So I use this level, and I check it in lots and lots of different places to make sure that the canvas is actually as level as it can be. And what I'm noticing right here is that it's a little uneven in the middle. The sides are all level, but there's definitely a little uneven in the middle. So what I am going to do is take some water, and I'm going to spray the back of this canvas. And what the water will do is it will actually tighten up the fibers in the canvas, and it will make the top of the canvas a little tighter, and then hopefully what I won't have in the middle is kind of any pooling. I don't know if you can hear that, but that definitely is a little tighter, that's for sure. So let's check this again and make sure that we're level on all sides. And if this canvas is staying on the table to dry and you've got it level, then great. But if you were going to put the canvas somewhere else, you just need to make sure that that's also level. So really important piece of equipment, just making sure that everything is as it should be on top of the canvas. Okay, that's done. Second thing I've got to do, this canvas has been sitting around for a couple of weeks, maybe 4 or 5. And I'm going to just clean off the top of this canvas and just make sure that there's no dust particles sitting on top of it. Because if there were, and then I put the resin on top, then I'd seal all those dust particles into the canvas. I'm going to use isopropyl alcohol to do this. Now my preferred way is to spray the alcohol onto my paper towel and then use my paper towel to wipe down the top of the artwork and the sides, making sure that everything has been wiped off. Now the alcohol kind of, you know, disintegrates, disappears the minute that you put it onto the canvas, and what you always get is a little bit of the colour on the paper towel. Even if this had been sitting here for like 6 months, I guarantee that you'd still get a little bit of colour on the paper towel, but I'm not scrubbing this. As you can see, I'm literally just gently wiping the tops and the sides just to make sure that there's no grease, there's no dust, there's nothing on here, either A, that I'll trap underneath the resin, or B, that will stop the resin maybe actually sticking to the canvas. Grease off your fingertips can actually cause little divots and dimples and stuff in the resin as you actually, you know, pour it and let it sit. So I've now got a perfectly clean substrate. Next thing I'm going to do is put on some rubber gloves. Now this is how I resin, and that is by wearing 2 gloves on each hand, and there will be a reason for it, and I will show you as we go through the process, but trust me on this. Wear 2 rubber gloves on each hand, and the second glove that you put on your hand, make sure that the edges of it are lower than the first. So this is where my second glove is going to sit, and this is where my first glove is going to sit. I'm going to do that on both hands. If you're left or you're right-handed, then you can just do it on the hand that's the most dominant, but I like to do it on both hands just in case. So I am now gloved. The next thing I'm going to do before I actually open up my resin is take all the safety precautions that the manufacturer suggests before I even open this bottle. You're using here 2 chemicals, usually a part A and a part B, or part 1 and a part 2, and you're going to mix these 2 chemicals together, and the mixing of the 2 chemicals plus the stirring of the 2 chemicals is going to cause a reaction, which then over a period of time is going to harden, and that's what's going to cause the resin top coat. Because they're chemicals, you need to then make sure that you're following the manufacturer's guidelines. Usually that means well-ventilated space, that means masks, or any kind of equipment needed in order to keep yourself safe and secure. So I am going to insist that you follow the manufacturer's guidelines on the resin that you're purchasing for all the safety precautions. There is no reason to take any kind of side steps or any shortcuts when it comes to safety, when it comes to using these products. So please follow the instructions on the labels. Okay, so most resin is 2 parts, and most resin you mix equal parts of the 2 together. Some of them actually though are different. Maybe it's 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1. Again, follow the manufacturer's guidelines. Mixed Media Girls resin is simple. You mix part A and part B in equal parts together, and that's how you resin. Mixed Media Girls resin can also be used for pyramids, for dominoes, for tumblers and art products, art crafts, as well as top coating. So it's one of the reasons why we love it so much. Also doesn't have a terrible smell. It's also really easy to mix. So that's one of the reasons, well, it's many reasons why we really like using Mixed Media Girls resin. Okay, so safety precautions are in place. I've cleaned off my canvas, I've got my gloves on. How do I know how much resin I need for this canvas? Because, you know, it's been painted, I know the size of it, it's a 15 by 30. How do I calculate how much resin I'm going to need? Well, I go to the Art Resin Calculator, which I will show you right here, and that's how I calculate how much resin I'm going to need. It's a really simple process. You put in the length times the width and the width of the canvas, and then it will show you just how much resin you need. So for this 15 by 30, it's suggesting 16 ounces. I've got a 12 by 16 that I'm also going to resin, so I'll do these two together. So that means another 7 ounces. So I need 23 ounces of resin in order to top coat these two pieces. I'm also going to fix a piece of art for you too. So I'm going to throw in another 7 ounces. So I'm going to mix 30 ounces of resin in order to cover those 3 pieces. So that would be 15 ounces of each of the products. Now I've got a cup here which has the measurements along the side. I've also wiped this out with my isopropyl alcohol just to make sure that there's no dust particles or anything sitting within this pot right here that I didn't want in my resin. And now it's going to be a really simple process of pouring out 15 ounces and 15 ounces in this jug in order to get me to 30 ounces of resin. So that's exactly what I'm going to do next. Now, if you've seen my previous video, you saw me do this on a scale. And a lot of people commented that you shouldn't weigh these products on a scale because fluid ounces is different than ounces, and one of these products is actually heavier than the other. Now that is absolutely the case. These products always say to you to actually measure them out on a cup, and you put the same amount of the product, 15 ounces and 15 ounces, from being measured in an actual cup rather than on a scale. However, what I will tell you is, I always do it on a scale, and I've resined maybe 100 pieces of art, and in all that time I've never had one of them fail me, because I feel like the small amount of product that we're mixing, the difference between a scale and on here is very, very tiny, and it doesn't impact the actual chemical reaction of the two products mixing. But again, I'm going to tell you guys to follow the instructions that are printed on the actual labels, and I'll do it the way that Mixed Media Girl absolutely says, and that is to actually put them into a jug and measure them rather than measure it on a scale. So 15 ounces of each of these products, product A and product B. That's what I'm going to do right here. So there we go. I've now got 30 ounces of product sitting within this cup. And now what I'm going to do, just like Mixed Media Girl's instructions on the side of the bottles, are to mix this product together for 2 to 4 minutes. Now I've got a fair amount of product in this jug right here, so I'm going to mix it for that solid 4 minutes. And what I'm going to do as I mix in every single time is make sure that I am scraping the edges of this jug, because what I want to do is to mix the product together as much as I can. If you don't scrape the edges, you'll then have either product A or product B sitting on the edges of your jug or your cup or whatever it is that you're choosing to mix your resin in. So I want to make sure that what I'm doing regularly is scraping the edges and scraping the bottom of my jug here in order to make sure that I mix these two products together as much as I can. And I'll go through some warnings with you in a little bit once these products are mixed. Now, the other thing that I am not doing is really at this point paying any attention to how many bubbles I've got within this jug. You can see me whipping this thing up. My advice to you guys is whip this resin up as much as you can, as much as your arms will allow you. I see people out there mixing like this, really gently, because what they don't want to do is create any bubbles. Now, that may well be the case. If you don't want to get bubbles in your resin, this is the way to do it. Mix it really gently. But I'm going to say this to you, that one of the reasons why most people have resin fail on them is because they'll see rivers of either part A or part B still in their resin once they've poured it. And that's because the two products have not been mixed together. It's highly unlikely that one of the reasons why your resin is failing is because you haven't been able to pop the bubbles in your resin, which actually is a really, really easy process. And so my advice to you is whip your resin up. Do not care how many bubbles you get in your resin at this point, because to me it is way more important that your two products are mixed together properly, rather than worrying about how many bubbles you're getting in your resin at this point, because I'm going to show you how to pop every single one of those bubbles. So I am going to mix for 4 straight minutes, and then we will be back. All right, so now we've mixed for 4 straight minutes, and I feel like this has been properly incorporated, and this is milky because there's so many bubbles in it. but I am not going to worry about that because I'm going to show you exactly how to get rid of them. So I've got 30 ounces of resin here. I only need 16 ounces for this 15 by 30 inch canvas. So I'm going to pour 16 ounces now out onto this canvas, and this is how I like to do it. I want to make sure that all of my edges are fully coated with resin. So my first dribble of resin from this jug is actually as close to the edge as I can, because I'm going to use that to fall over the canvas. And then what I'm going to do is pour some resin in the middle, just like this. And as you can see, I hope you can see, there are tons of bubbles sitting in this resin right now, but that is okay. So that's 10 ounces of resin. Let's add a little bit more. Okay, that's about 10, 12, it's about 14 ounces. So I'm going to stop at this point and just put that resin to one side. Now this resin has a working time of probably anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes. So I know that I can keep that to one side as I go to resin through these pieces. Now, first off, one of the reasons why we've got 2 gloves in is because now what we're going to do is get our hands in this resin. So I prefer to do this with my hands rather than with a tool, because I want to feel where the resin is covering the canvas. What you need to make sure that you're doing is getting full coverage of the resin all over this canvas. Otherwise you'll have spots where, you know, it's not there. Clearly that's, you know, important to make sure that you get 100% coverage. So I'm going to, with my gloved hand, run my hand all the way over this canvas to make sure that we have coverage everywhere. And the reason why we poured that bead of resin around the edges first is because I'm now going to take my gloved hand and make sure that the resin falls over the edges of the canvas too. And then I'm going to rub my hand along the sides to make sure that we've got full coverage. Now it's really easy to feel with a gloved hand where the resin is and the resin isn't. I can feel with my gloved hand that the resin is here because it slides really smooth. But with the same gloved hand, I can feel that the resin is not on the back because it's kind of sticking. So I'm going to take some resin from the top, and with my gloved hand, I'm going to make sure that the resin covers the whole of the back of the canvas too. So this is a process of just making sure that there is enough resin on top of the canvas, that everything is completely covered, and that we're covering the edges too. So run your fingers of your gloved hand along the edge at the back, along all the sides, to make sure that the resin has got full coverage, taking, you know, paying attention to the corners just like you would when the painting was painted. And also on the top as well, making sure that everything is covered. And then I'm going to take that extra couple of ounces of paint that extra couple of ounces of resin that I've left in my jug, and then I'm going to pour it on the top. So once all my edges, all the sides have all got 100% coverage, I'm then going to make sure that I've got enough resin on the top to make sure that there's a beautiful kind of 100% coverage all over this piece of art. Excellent. Okay, and my hand is just now sliding all the way along all edges, so I know for a fact now that I've got 100% coverage of resin all along the sides. So let's take that extra couple of ounces of resin and then smooth this out along the top, and just make sure that every single edge is covered and that I haven't missed any spots on the top. Now, one of the great things about resin is it is self-leveling, which means that that big puddle of resin that I just poured in the middle, as long as this canvas is nice and straight, it will actually spread itself out across the whole top of this canvas, which is what I'm expecting it to do. Going around and around the edges again, just to make sure everything is covered. Now, one of the things that I know you guys say about resin is that it pulls away from the edges. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is because your canvas is not taut, and everything is pooling in the middle. And another reason is because you haven't gone around the edges of the canvas to make sure that there's actually resin there in the first place, or that the canvas is not straight and the resin then is like tipping off the edges of the canvas. What I hope that I will see as this sits is that nothing falls off the edge. If there was a big puddle of resin on this side and there was nothing on this side, then I would know that the canvas is leaning this way. So that's one of the reasons why we we use that spirit level to make sure that the canvas is as straight as possible, because you want all this resin that you've just poured on top of this canvas to be here as long as it can be. All right, so I told you there'd be a reason for the gloved hands. Well, now that we've just done what we've done, we still want to make sure that we can touch this canvas, but I want not to have all this resin on my hand. So now I can remove one of the pairs of gloves, and I still have another pair of gloves underneath. So it means I can still pick up the canvas and not get resin on my hands. The next thing is to get rid of all of these bubbles that I put in here by whipping up this resin. And the way to do that is with a torch. Now, this torch is full with butane, and what I'm going to do is pass this torch over the top of the resin, as close to the resin as I can get it without the flame touching the resin. And what you'll see, it's really hard for you to see it, but what I can see is all the bubbles underneath the resin slowly starting to pop. Now this is a process. I will do this 2, 3, maybe 4 times before the resin starts to harden, to make sure that I'm popping every single one of the bubbles that sits underneath the resin. The reason why that torch keeps flaming is because I've just filled it with butane, so it's a little full. So apologies, you shouldn't be doing that. But what I'm doing here is just popping the bubbles that sit on top of this canvas. And even though that resin was whipped as much as I could in those 4 or 5 minutes that I was mixing it, what I can see now is that most of the bubbles that were sitting here have been popped as I've just torched this off. It's another one of the reasons why I love Mixed Media Girls resin so much. It's so easy to pop the bubbles. It's not thick, it's just a really perfect consistency. So, that's my first pass. I'm now gonna take my iPhone out my pocket and I'm gonna shine my light on top of my canvas to see if I can see any more bubbles sitting here within the piece. It's really easy to see when you shine a light just where any of those bubbles might be. You can also see any schmutz, you can see anything that you need to pluck out your canvas. I could take my gloved finger right now and pick something out of this wet resin, as you know, because resin is self-leveling, so it would actually then level itself back again. But I can't see any bubbles sitting here in this canvas right this second, but as it sits, anything that I might not see might actually rise to the surface. So what I'm going to do now is take a picnic saver, one of the nets that we use whenever we're having our paintings sit to dry, and I'm going to place this over the top of my canvas and I'm going to sit this here for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to torch it again. All right, so 5 minutes have passed. Let's take off that picnic saver, put that gently to one side because we'll need it again in a minute. And I'm going to see if there are any bubbles that might have now risen to the surface that I wasn't able to catch the first time. And I'm going to see if I can catch these this time. And I do see a few bubbles popping. Now, these just weren't at the surface of the resin the first time I popped them, but they're there now. And I'm not heating up the resin. I'm really just passing the flame across the top of the resin. I'm not keeping it in any one place for too long because I don't want to burn my resin, but all I'm doing is I'm gently heating up the resin to make sure that I'm popping any of the bubbles. And then I'll take my iPhone out of my pocket again. I'll make sure that there's no schmutz in here that I might have dropped in it as I've picked up the net once or twice, and then I'll leave it for another 5 minutes. All right, 5 more minutes have passed. So what's that? That's been 10 minutes of this piece sitting with resin on top of it. And I'm gonna go in for hopefully what will be my last pass. I'm gonna torch this off once more time, just making sure that any of the bubbles that maybe weren't at the surface of the piece, that weren't able to be popped the first and second time round, that I'm getting them the third time around. This looks like a glass-like finish at this point. I don't know if you can see the shine and the shimmer, but it's looking particularly pretty right now. I have enough time to be able to do this and show you this piece completely resined, so you'll be able to see just how beautiful this is going to look when this resin is dried on top of this canvas. But this should be the very last time that I need to torch this piece. There really are no bubbles that I'm popping at this point. I feel like everything has got full coverage, and I feel like this is going to sit perfectly. But at this point, I'm also just making sure that the resin isn't pooling, you know, and spilling off the canvas in any of the areas here. And it's really not. You know, there is going to be resin that will actually come off the sides of your canvas. And I'm going to take my spatula or a popsicle stick and just run this along the edges every time that I pop those bubbles, just to make sure that the resin isn't being pulled off the top of the canvas, just like you would when you paint a piece. But thankfully I can see that the resin isn't being pulled off any one of the sides in particular. It looks to be particularly straight at this point. So I'm now gonna get my net once more. I'm going to cover this up, and then I'm going to leave it for 24 hours before I go anywhere near it. The resin that Mix Media Girl provides says that it's dry to touch within 24 hours. You'll be able to really use it if it were dominoes or pyramids or anything within 72 hours, and it's fully cured within 7 days, but it could take up to 30 days for kind of heat and scratch resistance, but it also will depend on the kind of the humidity of where you are. So I would say to you to leave it definitely for 24 hours before you even come back and touch it. And for a canvas like this, I wouldn't send this out in the post to anyone for at least a week or two, just to make sure it's fully cured. But that's how easy it is to apply a resin coat. It really is very simple. It's not something you guys should be scared of. But let's just say something does go wrong. And how do you fix it? Well, let's have a look at that. All right, so our canvas has been put to bed overnight. 24 hours it will sit there. I just checked it one last time after I've torched it thrice, had a look, there are no more bubbles there. I don't need to torch that one again. But let's just say, for example, you poured a beautiful resin top coat and something got into your resin. It could be a hair, it could be a bubble, it could be something that you just didn't notice. How about fixing it? How do you go about fixing it? What's the process? Can you fix it? The answer is absolutely yes. It can totally be fixed, and it's easier than I think most people think, because I think people think, well, oh my gosh, I'm going to pour a resin top coat on, and then what happens if it messes up my beautiful piece of artwork that's sitting underneath it? You know, I've then just ruined a canvas after it. I got a beautiful composition. Well, I'm going to show you just how easy it is to fix. So this is a canvas that, gosh, it's been sitting in our studio for a little while. It was a piece that I poured, I think, on a Patreon Live. It's got so much dust on it actually, because it's been sitting here a little while. I haven't even tried to sell this one. It does have a perfect resin top coat, but I am going to assume that there is something in it right here in the middle that I want to try and get rid of. What do I do? You might or might not believe this, but what you actually do to it is you take some sandpaper to it and you scratch the top of the surface until you get rid of whatever it is that was sitting in your resin. Now, you know, your top coat of resin is millimeters thick. So what I'm going to say to you is be really careful that you don't sandpaper your resin down to the actual canvas, because if you get to the canvas and you then destroy the canvas underneath the protective coat of resin, then there's nothing that you can do. But you can see me scratching with an 80 grit, this is 80 grit sandpaper, the top of this canvas in its entirety. You can see I've destroyed this piece of art with all these scratches, and we're presuming that I'm doing this because there was something sitting within the resin that I needed to get rid of. What grit do I suggest of sandpaper that you use? I tend to start with an 80 if it's something that I really need to get out, but you can go all the way up to a 220 if you want. I mean, it really is up to you. I like to use the 80 grit just because I feel like it's the easiest way to get something out of my canvas. But if I needed to be a little bit more gentle, then I would be more gentle with it and use it up to a 220 grit. That choice is yours. Use whatever you've got to hand. So you saw me completely destroy the top of this canvas. And what do we do next? Okay, well, we get that same alcohol that we use to clean off the top of the canvas, and we're going to get rid of all of the dust particles that we're sitting here now on top of this canvas. So you can spray directly onto your substrate, knowing that this evaporates fairly quickly, or you can spray into your cloth. To be honest with you, I do both, just to make sure that every single particle of dust has been removed from this canvas, because I've just sanded down the top of this resin. That created a ton of dust, and I just want to make sure that there's nothing left sitting on top of this canvas. So wiping this one down, paying attention to all the edges, and making sure that there's no more dust. One thing that I did forget to tell you, actually right at the very beginning, before we actually resined the first piece, was that I have not removed the backing, the paper, the blue tape from the back of the canvas. And there's a reason for that. And that's because as the resin falls down the canvas, I want to be able to use that blue tape to help me get rid of any drips of resin that you'll see. And I'll show you how we do that with the two canvases that we've got sitting here that are drying. So I've now removed all of the dust particles from the top of this canvas, but you can still see that it has been ruined by all of the sandpapering that I've done on the top. Well, now we're going to fix it. The great thing about resin, not only is it self-leveling, but it will fill in every single one of these little scratch marks that we've got here from me sandpapering this down. And I'll show you exactly how that works. Now, this is also the time to tell you that what I never do is never scrape the edges of the jug or the cup or whatever it is that I've mixed my resin in, just for the fear that there is some unmixed part A or part B sitting along the edges of the cup. So never ever ever scrape and scrape and scrape your resin out to catch every single last drop of it. Please don't do that, because what you have the chance of doing is then getting unmixed resin into your top coat. And now I'm going to go through the same process. So I've got two gloves sitting on my hands, and I'm now going to just take this resin and cover completely this canvas from top and sides. Now this is a slightly smaller canvas, so you did see me not put that bead of resin around the edges, but I would normally do that on every single canvas. But I'm just making sure that everything is covered, all the sides. I'm running my hand along the sides to make sure that the resin is completely covering 100% of this substrate, whatever that may be, whether it's a wooden board, whether it's a canvas, whatever it is, a metal board. I'm just making sure that it's 100% covered on all sides. Then we're going to take the torch to it again and complete the same steps, torching this off as many times as necessary, usually 2 or 3, to make sure that the canvas is completely devoid of any of those bubbles that we got as we were mixing the resin up. And then I'm going to let it sit for another 24 hours to make sure that it's completely cured on top. So let's take that first pass. First off, I'm going to remove my first set of gloves, and then we'll take the first pass with the torch and make sure that everything is completely bubble free on here. And we'll set it down for its second and third torching. Let's do it. Okay, let's go in for that second torching. Five minutes have passed. There's very few bubbles in here. I feel like any of the bubbles that were in this resin definitely kind of dispersed as it was just sitting in the jug as I resined off the first and second pieces actually. The second piece being the piece that I'll show you at the end, which was Kathleen's. Yeah, there's not an awful lot of bubble. Let's sit this down for another 5 minutes and we'll give it one last pass just in case. 5 more minutes passed. Let's do this one last time. There were some really small bubbles that I did see pop, even on that third time, but I can see now if I were to take my iPhone out and shine my camera across the top, that all those bubbles have completely been popped. Now it's going to sit here for 24 hours and I can't wait to show you the dry results, which you will see if you bear with me in the outro. Let me show you just how beautiful these 3 pieces, because I also resined Kathleen's for you, turn out. All right, so our resin has now cured on this wonderful piece of art. I'm not going to show you the other side because I'll show you that in the outro, so stick around. But I want to show you how to finish your piece of art. So you remember we stuck that blue tape either back on if you'd taken it off, or we kept that blue tape on if it was already on the back of your painting. You'll be able to see all these little kind of like little nubbins of resin that have dripped down the piece of art. If the blue tape wasn't here, these would now be stuck on the back of your canvas. But hopefully you've all taped it off nice and neatly. And now we're going to remove these with the blue tape. Simply all we do is simply take our torch, the torch that you've been using to pop your bubbles on top of your canvas all this time, and you're just going to heat up the edge of the resin. Now, you've got to be kind of a little careful here. You're heating up the edges, but you're not staying in one space too long. You don't want to burn the blue tape that's underneath it, but you're going to take a pass on this for kind of, 10-15 seconds, and then you're going to simply peel off the blue tape. That little bit of heat, what it does is it just allows the resin drops just to be peeled off the top of your canvas. Just like that. So I'm going to go around and do that again. Let me show you on this side. So we're simply going to heat up the edge of the canvas, going backwards and forwards. 10-15 seconds, not staying in one spot any too long. If you burn the edges of the tape, that is okay. You're going to peel this tape off. You're not staying and heating up one specific spot of the resin for too long. You're just going backwards and forwards. And then you're going to peel off the blue tape, and as you've done that, you can see these little nubbins are simply just peeling right off, just like that. So it's a really straightforward process to clean up the back of your canvas by just keeping that blue tape on there and just heating it up with the resin. I'm going to do the rest of this real quick. And there we have it. So I'm just going to take a quick second just to clean up these little parts of blue tape that are still sticking on the back of the canvas, but that is pretty much all of the resin drops all taken care of. If you feel any kind of slight bumps, you can just take a blade to this just to clean it up, but we'll actually put most of these canvases that we do resin into little frames, so it's kind of not even necessary. But that's how simple it is. If you keep that blue tape on the back, use your torch just to heat up the resin in the areas that you're peeling your tape off, and then the rest of it is fairly easy. Stick around to the very end, guys. Let's see you in the outro and we'll show you these pieces now finished.
Well, geez, there you have it.
There you have it.
This man here, Lee Masse, he is so amazing whenever he works with resin.
Thank you.
And the results are just stunning.
Well, that was very sweet of you to say. I really enjoy putting resin top coats on. I honestly think that I've probably done maybe 100 of these now.
Yeah.
Because we've had that many pieces of art go through the studio. And listen, sometimes it messes up, sometimes this fluffs, sometimes there isn't enough, but there's always ways to fix it. And I'm hoping that with this episode you will see that you'll never spoil a piece of art. I think that's what it is. People are afraid of making something really pretty and then messing it up.
Destroying the piece.
Exactly. that should never be in question. So let us show you a few, well, all of the pieces that you saw me kind of resin on the episode.
Yeah.
You weren't here because you were taking care of your mom.
Yeah.
So this is the first time you're seeing these as well.
Oh my gosh.
This is the piece that I sanded to within an inch of its life because we said that there was something in it, and then re-resined. And again, I'm hoping that this shows up on camera. Resin on camera and photographs is always really hard because of the glare. But I'm hoping you can see just how stunning this now looks. You know, that it looked a mess with that sanded down kind of finish on top of it. But as soon as you apply the resin again, it just fills all those gaps. It's now got a beautiful, thick, shiny coat of resin, and it's ready to sell. In fact, it's got all of the stuff on the back resin, ready to sell. Jeremy, show them Kathleen's piece.
Oh, I'm in love with this piece.
There are people,
and she demands it back.
Yeah, there are people that have walked through the garage and coveted this piece.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, is that yours? Can I have it?
People have been wanting to purchase this left and right. You hear that, Kathleen? So I absolutely just love the resin finish on this. I mean, it just made those colors pop.
You know, it's really stunning.
It is.
Kathleen's colour palette choices are always sublime, but with that resin top coat on, it looks great.
Oh yeah.
And now let us show you the giveaway piece. Yeah. So there was an episode previously that we asked you guys to comment on, and we are going to, not just yet, we're going to still invite people to go to that episode and go and comment on it. The link will be in the description box below, but it's entitled $500 art piece giveaway.
Yes.
We'll draw the name out of the hat in a couple of weeks, but we did resin this piece for you guys also. Jeremy, hold this side for me.
Yes.
Look at that.
Oh my God, you guys. I love how this turned out. No, seriously.
If it's 3 loves, you know that Jeremy loves it.
Yes. I mean, look at that. It just completely came to life with this resin finish on it.
Well, and I love that this is now a true collaboration because you painted it on a Facebook episode and I resined it. So yeah, it's definitely got a bit of both of us in here.
Yeah.
Now listen, there's always going to be slight imperfections. These are handmade pieces of art. You might get a little something here or there in these pieces, but I've got to say to you that, you know, that's always part of the course. It's never going to be completely clear unless you're doing it in a clean room environment, which none of us are. But don't worry about that kind of stuff. It's basically, you know, you just got to go for it.
And you can't really see anything.
No, you can't.
I mean, he's being really hard on himself.
Oh, you know, you just got to do what you can do. Is what I'm going to say. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're mixing things up. I've been talking to a lot of people online about gaining followers, subscribers, Facebook views, YouTube views, because, you know, in a lot of places the views are going down. And so we're mixing things up with new style intros and titles and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeremy, should we flash up real quick one of the pieces of that you've just made in a recent? Yeah, I want to show everyone.
Okay.
Stick around, guys, to see Jeremy play around with. I'll hold it because you can talk about it. Our motorized spinner from the paintpourstore.com.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be doing some stuff like this. How cool. I wasn't here to see this piece because I was traveling with work.
Yeah.
But Jeremy, this is very Callum Schaub-esque.
Absolutely.
But you've definitely got your own twist in here because there's things in here that I can see that I don't see elsewhere. But that's going to be coming up in a future episode.
There's also a second one that I painted on that episode that you're not seeing right now.
But they're very pretty. There's some stuff that you want to do to them to finish them off, and then I'll resin these for you as well.
Yes.
And maybe you'll see them finished on a future episode. You never knew.
Yes.
All right, guys. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe.
Yes.
Please hit that share button as well and get our content out there. We appreciate it. And that's it for now. We'll be back here again next Wednesday.
Yes.
With another episode. It could well be the motorized spinner episode for you, and we'll see you real soon. All right, guys.
All right.
Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.